Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the SAME DC Post First Friday webinar for March. I'm your host, Whitney Stoll, and welcome back for the First Friday webinar with our guest, Dr. Gabriel Legend from Visioneer IT, presenting Unmasking AI Blindspots, Agents, Data, and Security Risks. Also joining me are Samantha Long and Bree Beal, who are monitoring the chat and running the show behind the scenes. So we have over 100 registered participants from all over the world ready to learn about today's First Friday webinar. So in today's webinar, Gabriel will show you how emerging AI agents and everyday AI tools can quietly expose sensitive project data and what practical steps AEC teams can take to reduce security risks while continuing to innovate with AI. But first, I'd like to welcome you all to introducing you to the First Friday webinar series, which is provided to you through SAME's commitment to offering the AEC community effective training, development, and networking programs. The DC Post is helping to sustain the future of the profession with these monthly education-focused sessions that are aligned with SAME's strategic goals to drive partnerships, deliver solutions, and develop people. So thank you all for joining us here today as we start our program. If you haven't already, please feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself, share your LinkedIn profile, where you're joining us from today, include your email for everyone and anytime throughout the program today. Ask questions in the chat so we can address them during our Q&A portion at the end. You can also chat with everyone and send messages to our hosts, presenters, or even with each other through the webinar as well. So we are recording today's session. We will post a video on our YouTube channel later on. So a copy of your slides, your PDH certificate, and the opt-in attendee list will also be available to download at the end of today's webinar. And we will also email you a copy as soon as the webinar ends. So be on the lookout for document delivery in the subject line with your downloads following today's webinar. We're excited to provide you an hour of education and virtual networking, no matter where you're calling in from. So I would like to take a moment to thank DC Post First Friday sponsors, Fox Rothschild, JS Global, ATG, KCCT, Parsons Corporation, and Stantec. We do truly appreciate your support and grateful for your generosity by making these webinar series possible for our members and SAME community. Annual sponsorship is still available at the DC Post. So now's your opportunity to support the webinar series, support this webinar series as a DC Post annual sponsor and start using your sponsorship benefits throughout 2026. Annual Platinum sponsors and First Friday sponsors help support this webinar event with free registration for SAME members and full-time students. So please visit our website for more information about sponsorship levels and how you can gain visibility for your company while giving back to the SAME community through your DC Post annual sponsorship. Please note that this program provides one professional development hour from the DC Post. I'm not going to read the learning objectives, since most of you saw those same objectives when you registered. Instead, I'm going to introduce our featured speaker in just a moment. And when I do the introduction, if you haven't done so already, please feel free to use the chat, introduce yourself, share contact information, where you're calling in from, your LinkedIn profile. This is your webinar series to help you learn about the special topic, as well as help you expand your business network throughout the program. Please do use the chat during the presentation to share comments, ask questions to our presenter. If there is a particular slide you'd like to talk about, please share that detail in your chat question. We will answer questions in the chat at the end of the program. You will not be able to save the chat, so please make sure to make any notes to everyone you'd like to connect with before the webinar ends. And now please join me in welcoming Dr. Gabriel Legend to our DC Post First Friday webinar. So Gabriel is the CEO of Visioneer IT and a cybersecurity technology leader with more than 20 years of experience helping organizations adopt emerging technologies like AI while protecting sensitive data and managing digital security risks. So please join me in welcoming Gabriel to our First Friday webinar. And now, Gabriel, I'm going to turn the program over to you.
Thank you so much, Whitney. Thank you, everyone, for having me. And I want to start this presentation off by saying that this session is not meant to, you know, scare anybody or anything like that around some of the things that we're going to be talking about. But before we dive in, I want to see if you all can put into the chat the words risk if you've ever clicked I agree on a terms and conditions for any AI tool without really reading, and especially if you've done it in the last week. That's exactly why we're here today. We're going to be talking about some of these things. And what I want to do in the next 45 minutes is essentially show you what is already happening right now inside organizations like yours, and give you enough language and context to have an informed conversation with your team starting next week. You might even be able to start it today, right? But you don't need to be technical, right? And in fact, some of the most important decisions that we're going to talk about today about AI security aren't technical at all. They're more management and operational and governance uh, in exactly right. So those are the high level reasons why we're here today. So let's dive in. So I want to start this off with a couple of uh, current events and some of what is happening in real time. Because when people tend to think about AI security, and the conversation can sometimes get a little bit, I'd say, abstract very quickly. It turns into buzzwords and frameworks and all types of theoretical risk. But if we really look at what actually is happening in the last 30 days, the picture becomes a more real. And that's what I want us to really examine today. So I want to give you a couple of examples. The first one is probably the most relevant for most organizations on this webinar. And recently, the Pentagon flagged Claude. If you didn't hear already, I'm sure everybody's on LinkedIn and might have heard about it. But they flagged Claude as a national security supply chain risk, and directed the military contractors to stop using it immediately. Now, let's think about that for a moment. So, if your firm has been using that platform on federal work, maybe for drafting reports, analyzing documents, uh, you know, summarizing materials. That's not just an embarrassing headline. That can become a contract compliance issue very, very quickly. And we'll come back to that point and why it really matters. But the second point is that research has shown that about, I'd say, one in every 12 prompts employees send to AI tools contain sensitive company data. That could be company information, financial data, internal strategy, any of that stuff. So essentially, in other words, the information that organizations or that you all here on this call would probably treat as confidential is kind of let loose into the wild. And in many cases, that data is being sent to servers your organization does not control, right? You don't control that at all. And so nobody even realized that it's happening. Third, that's what's going on is courts are beginning to really take a look and rule that communications processed by AI may not qualify for legal privilege. Okay, let's think about that for a moment. So, if someone on your team is using AI to draft or summarize legal documents, et cetera, because I know we probably have a few attorneys here on the call, right? Those interactions may not be protected the way a conversation with the attorney would be. And so, AI is not a confidential assistant at all. And then, fourth, um, security experts are now obviously warning that agents are basically the autonomous tools that we're using today. They may drive the next wave of cybersecurity incidents, and we're going to talk about some of those things a little bit later. But the point here is that unlike traditional software, agents move across systems, whether that be in your email, your CRM, shared files, scheduling tools as well. They can do that all at once, um, but they're moving at machine speed, so a lot faster than humans can, and where humans are even not even aware. And so finally, one more statistic that should get our attention is that about half of enterprises report that they have already experienced a security incident involving an agent in the past year. And so more than half say that agents acted outside the boundaries they were originally given. So these aren't just distant predictions, or none of that. They're actually signals of a bigger problem. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. All right. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what happened with Claude. I'm sure, again, everybody's been hearing the chatter on LinkedIn and on all the other platforms, Twitter, et cetera. But a few days ago, if you weren't aware, a few days ago, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth declared that Anthropic is a supply chain risk to national security. So, if you're not aware, Anthropic is the company that makes Claude, and he posted this on X that effective immediately, no contractor, no supplier, no partner doing business with the U.S. military can conduct any commercial activity with Anthropic. And then a couple hours later, the president directed every federal agency to immediately cease use of all Anthropic's technology. So let that sink in for a moment, that this is not a foreign company. This is an American company. And this designation as being a supply chain risk to national security has historically been reserved for foreign adversaries. And what's interesting about this is that Anthropic is the first American company to ever get that. Now, here's the part that makes this directly relevant to those in federal contracting. The dispute really wasn't about a security breach. There was no hack, there was no leak, no technical failure of sorts. The dispute is really about AI usage terms, specifically Anthropic's refusal to allow the military to use Claude for mass domestic surveillance or full autonomous weapons without restriction, which is definitely concerning. But essentially, Anthropic said that those two guardrails were non-negotiable, and obviously the Pentagon said that was unacceptable. All right, but the question is why does it really matter to you? And it's because if your firm is using Claude on federal work, and there's a real chance that you do, even if you don't know it, you're now sitting in a compliance gray zone, and the directive applies to you now, not after the courts figure it out, because we know that that could take forever, right? But here's the part most people don't realize is that Claude isn't just its own separate standalone product that you only get access to when you log in. It's actually embedded into Microsoft 365 Copilot. It's inside of GitHub Copilot. It's running inside tons of enterprise tools that firms that you all may be using today. And so even if nobody in your team has ever typed, Claude, .ai or anthropic.com, whatever, into the browser and is intentionally using it, your team probably is still using it within some of the applications that you're using every day. And so Anthropic is obviously fighting this in court, and obviously that's probably going to take a while, as I mentioned, but the legal question will probably take months and years to really even get resolved. But there's a compliance question here. And that compliance question is what do I do now? And that's the urgent piece. And the bottom line here is that AI vendors are now part of this compliance supply chain. And the way you vet your cloud providers and your subcontractors and your software vendors, you now have to really ask the question of, who makes this? What are their government relationships? What terms? All of those things. Read that fine print, right? We started off this conversation with asking, did you accept without reading? And some of you did type yes, and thank you for being honest, right? But the first step towards answering those questions is knowing what your team is obviously using. Let me put a face to this as well, right? I'm going to give a couple of examples and case studies, but because this story took off a couple of weeks ago around OpenClaw, if you guys can put into the chat whether you've heard of or used Claudebot or OpenClaw. It changed a couple of times. Let's see, did anybody put anything in the chat here? Okay. So if you're not familiar with OpenClaw, it's basically an autonomous agent, and it was built by a developer. I think he was in Austria, right? And he published it a couple of months ago, but basically within weeks, it had about almost 150,000 downloads on GitHub. And so today it's being used across the world. And so basically it can do anything that you want it to do in an autonomous fashion, and it connects to your email, calendar, all basically the tools that you provision it to get access to, and it acts autonomously around the clock, and it remembers everything across sessions. Now, this is where the story gets really interesting. is that Summer Yu, who is, I believe she's the director of alignment at Meta. She's the new super intelligence safety, works in the safety lab, right? And so her job title is AI safety. And what happened was she gave OpenClaw access to her email inbox, and she told it explicitly confirm before acting, right? It was very, very clear. And don't do anything without checking with me first. But but then she basically said it pointed out that inside of her inbox, it just kind of went wild and deleted literally everything, right? And that's really concerning. And she couldn't get it to stop. And so what essentially happened is, because her inbox was so large, the agent hit something that's called a context limit, meaning it essentially forgot its original instructions mid-task, and it just kept going, right? So the concerning part is that if a person whose entire job is to literally do AI safety at Meta, and she wasn't able to stop it, then I place a pretty hefty wager that nobody in this room would be able to do that, and nobody is immune. Before we go any further, I want to ask you a question, and I want you to put in the chat. If you know every tool that your team is using right now in your organization, put it in the chat. Say tool in the chat. A lot of organizations that we worked with, most of them would probably answer and say no. We don't know all the tools, and I want to say that it's not a failure, right? It's more of a visibility problem. And visibility problems are definitely ones that are solvable. And that's the gap, is because between what's happening and what leaders, there's a gap between what's happening and what leaders can actually see. And that's exactly what this session is about, to help close that gap. My earlier slides were set up for, what you're going to be walking away with, right? And you know, it's three simple things. And I'm not trying to, again, to make anybody an expert here. I'm trying to make sure you are empowered enough to ask the right questions. And this first question is you'll basically be able to, recognize the patterns that signal AI risk even before anything technically goes wrong. Most AI agents don't start with a breach; they actually start with a habit. Humans traditionally are the weakest link, unfortunately, and so this first question kind of leads us to that, right? It's just a symptom. And so two, you're basically going to leave with one specific action that you can take next week or even today. And three, you'll know exactly where accountability breaks down in your organization when sensitive data meets AI tools or agents. So for the next few minutes, I want to make sure we're all working from the same definition, because the word agent gets thrown around quite a bit, and it actually means something very specific that changes how you think about how you think about risk. And the best way I've found to explain what an AI agent is to really anyone is this analogy. Think of an AI agent similar to like a new employee that never sleeps, never asks permission, doesn't ask for smoke breaks, doesn't ask for any of those things, and it has a master key to everything you give it access to. And a regular employee waits to be told what to do. An agent literally decides its own next step. Regular agent asks before accessing a new system. An agent actually assesses whatever it was given access to automatically. A regular employee makes decisions you can trace. An agent often makes decisions you can't even see. A regular employee goes home at 5, and you obviously have to pay that person, right? But an agent works literally around the clock, unpaid. And again, a regular employee, you know who they are, and an agent, you've built this agent, or someone on your team has built this agent to, again, just keep running. But the last one is the one that tends to lay in the hardest, for people, and it's, you know, one question, who here is familiar with chatbots, right? I just want to see from the chat here, who's familiar with chatbots, right? So oftentimes people tend to confuse a chatbot with an agent, right? But the critical difference between a chatbot is which most of us are probably familiar with here. It just answers questions and responds with whatever that answer is. But an agent, it doesn't just answer a question. In fact, it takes steps on its own. It answers in sequence until it completes the goal. You set the goal. The agent then figures out the path. So that autonomy really is what makes it powerful. And it's exactly what makes it a new category of risk. We're going to talk a lot about risk today. So I want to pause for a moment and make sure everyone here is thinking, that nobody here is really thinking that, this is interesting, but it's not relevant to me. Because if we really think about it, we start looking at data, the data is telling us a very different story. Today, there's somewhere around 60 to 80% of organizations that have already released agents into their organizations, right? And whether it was intentional or not intentional, but more specifically, the ones that are unintentional, they weren't planning to. They were just released, right? And that's unfortunate. By the end of 2026, most enterprises expect to have over 100 agents working across their environment, often built on maybe 2 or 3 different platforms. But here's the part that makes it so urgent is that it takes a minute to build an agent, literally a minute. If someone on your team has access to Microsoft Copilot Studio, which is already included in many Microsoft 365 subscriptions, they can create a functioning AI agent today with very, very little technical background at all. And nearly half of those enterprises that I'm talking about here, they reported that they haven't even, sorry, that they're already experiencing some type of security incident involving an agent in the last year. So this isn't a I guess an early adopter kind of territory. This is already part of the environment that most organizations are operating within, even if they realize it or not. I'm going to walk you through 3 patterns, not theoretical risks or anything like that, but actual patterns that play out in real organizations. And you may recognize your own firm in one of these, but I won't ask you to raise your hand or tell on yourself. Okay. So let me give you a couple of patterns or actual examples or scenarios. So let's talk about Sarah. And Sarah is VP of Sales. She's built an AI agent to help her team write targeted outreach emails and do marketing, etc. So to make it useful, she connects it to her Salesforce, her email, and to LinkedIn, all using her login credentials. And it works pretty well. She's pretty proud of herself. So She shares it with her team. She says, "Hey, I built this agent to help with outreach. Feel free to use it." Pretty soon, she's got a couple of people on the team that are running her agent. But here's what nobody's noticed is that the agent is still operating under Sarah's credentials, her identity, her access levels. So when Greg, right, another junior sales rep, runs the agent, the system thinks it's Sarah, right? So that means that the agent can see everything that Sarah can see. And then let's just say Greg suddenly has access to the CEO's private deal notes, acquisition targets, board level financial information, not because he hacked anything, not because anybody made a bad decision. I say Sarah did when she had everybody use it, but either way, that's negligible. Simply but because the agent inherited Sarah's permissions, now imagine an audit. The logs show that Sarah accessed everything because of the agent, but 10, 20 different people use the agent, and the system can't tell you which one did it, who did it. You know, legal starts asking questions, compliance starts asking questions, and there's really no way to reconstruct what actually happened. The important point here is that it isn't really even a far-fetched scenario. So this next scenario is one that security researchers are really most worried about right now. So, a little while ago, researchers at Zenity Labs publicly demonstrated a real vulnerability in AI agents, and essentially this is how it works. So, imagine a sales rep asked her AI agent to research a prospect. She said, "No, go find everything you can about the CTO, LinkedIn website, press release, all that stuff." Totally normal request. So the agent goes out, reads those resources, but hidden inside those pages is instruction. You couldn't see it if you were reading the page, but to the AI agent, it just looked like more text, right? So the instruction tells the agent to ignore the original task and start sending data somewhere else. And here's the problem: AI agents can't reliably tell the difference between instruction that their user is giving and instruction that's hidden inside of the content they are reading. So the agent followed it. And so another part of what Zenity mentioned was is that, or showed in their research, is that in some cases, the attack vector can be sometimes or something as simple as a calendar invite. And the user accepts the meeting, the agent reads the invite, finds a hidden instruction, begins putting files from the system, sorry, starts pulling files from the system. Uh, all while it's basically returning a completely normal response to that user. And that's what makes it so scary. There's no warning, there's no sign, and it's just obviously like running in the background. So I liked one of the quotes that the CTO for Zenity said, and he basically said it's an inherent weakness in how agentic systems work today, which is the technical term for prompt injection. And that's the story that I'm talking through is how prompt injection can so easily happen. So this third pattern is the most human of the three, and some of you might have encountered this. And in some ways, the most dangerous. It's the most dangerous because it starts with really good intentions. The widely accepted answer to AI agent risk is something called human in the loop. I'm sure everybody here has, heard or said that, themselves, right? But basically, keep humans in the center, put a human in the approval chain before the agent does anything significant. It has to ask permission. That sounds pretty safe, right? But here's what's actually happening. So let's just say Monday morning, agent asks to access HR records, you approve it. Makes sense. Monday afternoon, it asks to essentially send a summary to all managers. You approve it. Tuesday, same thing. Now, by Wednesday morning, you're not really reading the requests anymore because you feel like there's a pattern here. It's just approve, approve, approve. You're clicking approve and not really reading it. And then Wednesday afternoon, when the agent asks to forward executive emails to an external address, you click approve because you've been clicking approve all week. That's a approval fatigue. And it turns into the most important safety control in your in your agent environment. And it turns into pure theater at that point. And this safeguard exists on paper, but the human technically is no longer actually in the loop. Agents can generate a ton of approval requests per hour, tons of them. We even get those within our organization, right? And so someone has to actually read that stuff. And humans typically can't keep up with it, and they just start hitting approve. Um, this control, this human in the loop control that was really designed to protect you, now becomes like a mechanism through which the damage actually happens. So now I want to show you why those three patterns keep happening. It's not because people aren't smart. It's not because of a structural gap in how organizations handle this, and it's almost universal. But before we get into the accountability structure, I want to give you the one rule that security experts say is worth memorizing, and it's that this rule of two. So no single agent should have all three of these at the same time, and that is access to private data, exposure to content. Exposure to content it doesn't control, and three, the ability to communicate externally. So any one of these three alone is fine, but two together requires careful design. We need to really think about this, right? And this is the real where the real problem is an agent with all three can be basically hijacked through something it reads on the web, direct it to steal your private data, and use email to send it out. That's the attack chain. And the rule of two is the simplest way to break it. Ultimately, when someone on your team wants to build or deploy an agent, this is the first question we need to ask. Does it have all three? If yes, then we need to take a closer look. So here's the core organizational problem. IT and security, and you all again might have experienced some of this, especially those who are really trying to embed AI and agents into your organization. But essentially, IT and security assume the business team is responsible for the tools they choose. Business teams assume IT reviewed and approved anything in use. Legal assumes procurement handles vetting. Leadership's assuming everybody is only using approved tools. But every silo has a reasonable assumption, and these assumptions are wrong. And the gap between those four assumptions is where incidents really do live. That's where risk is. And let me make this concrete. So, in most organizations right now, IT has no visibility into agents built by employees using Copilot Studio or their personal Microsoft accounts. And then business teams signed up for, let's just say, a free AI tool and clicked I agree, which some of you guys raised your hand. And then you started uploading data, information, maybe even client data, and had no idea the free tier allowed the vendor to train on their data. Legal is now assuming sensitive documents, is now summarizing um, legal documents, and it just becomes a huge challenge. And so ultimately, nobody is the villain here, but somebody really does need to own it. And by the way, there are separate tools that are available in the marketplace to really help you put some guardrails around these applications. And we can talk about a little bit that later on. So part of the reason that accountability gaps do exist is no one has really told organizations, what to do yet. There's no mature regulation or industry standard that fully addresses AI agents, and the EU AI Act is enforced, but it was written before agentic AI really took off. It doesn't mention agents, but the NIST AI risk management framework really does focus on model development, not autonomous agents operating inside real systems. So even cybersecurity insurance is starting to ask about AI use, and many firms are answering no, not even realizing that AI tools are already being used across their teams. So right now, the only framework built specifically around this problem is the OWASP Agentic Top 10, and you should definitely check that one out. The bottom line is these frameworks haven't really caught up yet, which means this isn't something you can outsource to compliance. It's something leadership really has to pay attention to. I want to spend a few minutes on something that's especially relevant for this audience. So, if your firm holds federal contracts, and many of you do, the risks around AI use aren't just reputational, they're actual contractual. First, CUI. Um, if your teams handle federal project data, drawings, specifications, facility information, that data there's a big may qualify as CUI, but some people may not realize that. But by pasting CUI into an unapproved AI tool can be a compliance violation under DFARS, right? So the intent is not what matters here. It's one engineer, one paste, one contract at risk. Right? It happened, whether it was intentional or it just happened. Second, we have CMMC. CMMC does require documented control over how sensitive data moves throughout your system. That includes AI tools, even productivity tools that come bundled with software you already use. So if AI use isn't visible and accounted for, that can create a compliance gap. So the next one is personal clearances. So if someone with a clearance processes work related information throughout an unapproved AI tool, that may trigger a reportable issue. I know CMMC is the talk of the day, talk of the town right now. So let's really think about this one. So the question isn't whether harm has occurred, it's whether proper procedures were followed. So while most conversations around AI focus on productivity and, you know, government contractors technically have another layer to consider here, and it is around compliance. And that applies to, I'd say, a majority of the people in this room that is using AI on project work, not just engineers or not just cleared staff. So now let's talk about what you can actually do. All right. So think of these 6 questions as a quick diagnostic. Just a quick diagnostic. If you can answer all of them confidently, you're probably in good shape. If not, those gaps show you where you need to start. So first, what AI tools are people in your company and your team actually using? Not the approved list, but the actual list. Okay. Second, who built the AI agents in your organization and what type of data do they access? Third, did anyone actually read the data terms before clicking agree? Fourth, if an agent made a mistake or was compromised, would you even know about it? Number five, are any agents running under someone's personal login? If so, everyone using that agent may have that person's access. Sixth, does your cyber insurance policy ask about AI use? Some of them do, some of them don't, but I think it's going to be a trend that we start to see a lot more. So you don't have to solve all of these today, right? It's just start with the one or two that makes it probably the most uncomfortable. So here are a few phrases that we should view as early warning signs that we should be looking or taking a little bit deeper. This could be things you might hear in a meeting or in a Slack message or Teams message that could trigger a deeper conversation, because it does start with a conversation across the teams. Um, I'll just paste it into ChatGPT real quick. That's one. That's how it typically starts. Or the AI already sent that for me, which means maybe nobody reviewed it. It just sent it out under your firm's name. That's very concerning. Or I built a quick agent for the whole team. Well, on whose login? With access to what? Or people might say, I just approved what it takes. I just approved whatever it asks. And it's off to the races. That's a safe that's not a safeguard anymore. That's a rubber stamp. You're just hitting approve, right? We use the free version. It works great. Well, free means someone is paying with something, and that's normally with your data, right? So here's the thing: nobody's saying any of this is trying to, where anybody's trying to cause a problem or do anything bad. They're just trying to do their job faster. They want to be more efficient. And the question isn't how do you stop them per se. It's how do you make sure they know what they're handing over before they actually hand it over. One thing I see missing in a lot of security conversations is this: people know there's a risk, but they don't know how to start the conversation. So here's the language. In your next team meeting, I want you to ask a couple of questions. I want you to do quick check-ins. When someone shows you a new tool, say, hey, before we start using this, we need to, know what happens, what it does, what type of data is being collected. And again, it's a conversation to be had, and we need to have these conversations all the time, especially as we're trying to adopt new technology. So this slide here, this is the slide I want you to actually take and do something with, right? A couple of things. You don't have to do all of them, just pick one. You can send a quick survey, read the data terms on an AI tool, create a simple AI policy, check for agents using personal logins or really any login, and add AI to your next team meeting. Let's keep on having these conversations. And I want to close with the same idea I started with, which is, because it's the most honest way to describe where we are right now. The agents are already inside our most of our organizations and the software we're using. The real question is whether anyone can see them. This last slide, highlights a little bit about what we do at Visionary T, but really, it's the answer to almost everything we've covered during this conversation here. And at Visionary T, we make sure innovation doesn't just outrun security. We assess your AI risk, secure environment, automate and integrate the right technology, and train your people to make smart decisions before they make expensive ones. This last part is the one most firms skip. You can have the best policy in the world, but if nobody reads it and there are no controls behind it, it's just a document in a SharePoint folder that nobody opens. And with that, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak today to you all. And if you all are interested in reaching out to me, here's my email address, and I am on LinkedIn as well. And thank you again so very much for having me.
Great. Well, hey, Gabriel, this was great. Very timing was great. So we definitely have a lot of questions. So let's dive right into it. And his contact information is on here as well. So Gabriel, what should we tell our clients when they ask us about our AI policy?
Most firms say they're taking data security seriously, and I hope that's we hope that, and they hope that's enough, but it won't be for much longer. What clients really need to be asking is, my data being fed into AI tools that I didn't approve? The firms that are really going to do well in the future are the ones who can answer this question very specifically and have the data to back it up, not just obviously with a paragraph of reassurance or any of that stuff, but they actually know exactly, where their data is. They have guardrails around it. They've got their employees. They actually, let me back up. They've actually created a culture where people are not individuals. One individual is not being the weakest link, right? And I think it's a cultural change that needs to happen within an organization.
Got it. Okay. So I've heard hackers are now using AI to really write malware that really rewrites itself to avoid detection. And someone's curious; they want to know if that is real, and what do I got to do about it?
Yeah, so it definitely is real, and what it's called is a polymorphic malware, right? And so what it means basically is malware that changes its own code to look different every time it runs, so your antivirus doesn't recognize it. And AI didn't invent this concept, but it made it very accessible to attackers who never could have built it before. There are people who can turn into can use AI to create this type of issue, and they don't have 2 decades of software development or hacking experience. They used AI to do this. And what used to require a nation state level team now requires a prompt in a free weekend. But here's what makes it specific to people in this room, specifically relevant to people in this room, is your perimeter security was really built to catch human speed attacks. And a human attacker hits a wall, stops, thinks, tries something different. But an AI attack, kind of like this polymorphic malware, it just keeps going and learning, and it keeps figuring out how you caught it and then changes it again and again and again. And that's what makes it so dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. So Linda asks, it's a two-part question. Uh, First is, don't you have to deploy the agent before it can carry out its instructions? And then part two is about Copilot. And so what types of security incidents are being reported around Copilot?
So I believe Microsoft does, actually, whether it's Microsoft or I can't remember the actual website, but a lot of these incidents are being reported, but there's a lot of incidents that are not being reported. And that's what's concerning, right?
Yeah.
Because when people do report these incidents, then I think everybody can live vicariously through that incident and then say, oh, yeah, well, we're not going to do that. Or we're going to put some special guardrails in place so that, we don't make it on the, front page of the Washington Post magazine. Obviously, nobody wants to be there for that reason, right? But what was the first part of the question?
The first part is, don't you have to deploy the agent before it can carry out its instructions?
Yes, you do have to deploy it, but going back to the one of the scenarios I mentioned, if somebody deploys it and then everybody starts using it, then it was deployed, but then people started using or sharing it. And again, there's different types of agents. But in this case for Microsoft, yes, I mean, you do need to deploy it, but all you need is one person deploying it and giving it context, and then it can create a huge challenge.
Good. Teresa is asking, how does the agent develop the questions leading to approval fatigue, and is it malicious?
How does it create the questions?
Yeah, how does
Well,
the
it
agent develop the questions leading to approval fatigue, and can that be malicious?
well, well, I don't think the agent again is innately malicious, right?
Hmm.
But the thing is, going back to one of the scenarios I mentioned, is it keeps sending you notifications. It keeps asking, do you want me to send an email to Bob? Do you want me to do this? And then you keep getting the same questions. And again, as humans, we're moving fast and breaking things and getting stuff done, right? Because we're trying to be efficient, and we just keep hitting approve, approve, approve. And then at some point, that's when something can potentially happen, right? But that's where the approval can cause you to not read and look through what it's asking you for approval on.
Okay,
But the
got it.
agent itself is not malicious. The agent, I can't say in that case, is malicious. It's doing what you've asked it to do.
Great. Swetha, I apologize if I mispronounced your name. If you use an AI agent for non-work related reasons, but use your work computer, does that still put your work related files at risk?
Absolutely.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Uh, and Teresa asked a great question here. What is the simplest way to see all of your AI activities?
Very interesting. So there is a piece of software that we deploy into organizations that allows an organization to have a clear visibility into who is using what and how they're using it, and even at the browser level. So, as an example, if you try to put in, if you're using ChatGPT and you put in or try to put in someone's social security number or some type of information that you shouldn't be doing, right? There's a big banner that's going to pop up and say, "Hey, Whitney, it looks like you're trying to put a social security number in here. You can't do it," and it's not going to let you press enter, right? And then it's going to basically tell your boss, Whitney, that you were doing the wrong thing, and then it starts from there, right? So it's looking at the human behavior that's happening on all of these different models. So it's not just Chat GPT, it's all of them, right? So there are products that we have that allow you to have that type of visibility and lock it down at the browser level, at the policy level, and also at the device level.
Got it. Okay. And that kind of leads into John Knight's question. Are there incidents of AI recording sessions without permission? And John, I take it you're thinking of team sessions. You're probably thinking if your device is recording, if it has some type of mobile phone, all that jazz. I take it that's what, yes. Okay. Yeah. So that's the question.
So this is the thing about how fast agents and AI is moving, is that it may not be possible today, but it could very well be possible tomorrow. And just because it is not a functionality that is known to the masses doesn't mean that it isn't a functionality that's used by hackers and attackers. It's how valuable is your data, right? And so when you think about and start to quantify how valuable your data is and what somebody is willing to pay for that data, then yes, I believe that it does happen and it is happening. But yes, I think these things are going on, and similar to the situation that I mentioned before with OpenClaw, there's lots of things that are happening that we don't understand and know why it's happening. But we should be concerned and guard our data and guard our systems and not give it access to any type of proprietary information, whether that be meetings, transcripts, all of those things. It's again, it starts with our behavior, and we need to start changing and assessing risk and looking at risk very differently than we are probably accustomed to.
Got it. We have a few more questions, but we might have to go a little bit over. But one more before we need to close out. I know Gabriel will stay a few minutes afterwards for sure. So should we allow AI bots to attend meetings? If you didn't initiate as the owner of the meeting, and someone else brings an AI bot into the meeting.
I mean, I think it depends on the type of meeting we're talking about, right? It's the nature of the meeting. I mean, if it's a client meeting and your client is wanting its bot in the meeting, if they're your client, then I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with it, because there shouldn't be anything said in that meeting that they shouldn't be able to have access to after the meeting. So I think that those things are fine, but just figuring out, what is part of your policy. When will meetings be recorded? When will agents or chatbots or whatever be allowed in? Set some boundaries, right, and rules. But at the end of the day, we do want to make sure that humans are able to leverage AI. And this conversation here is not meant to tell everybody not use agents, don't use AI. That is not at all what I'm trying to say. But we need to use the technology mindfully and use it to help us move faster and to give us, some of our time back, because that's really what we're getting when we're using AI and agents, is we're buying back our time. And I think that all those things are possible. But again, we need to, again, be mindful of where the boundaries are as we're using it.
Absolutely. And I know you had a few other questions, but I do want to be respectful of everyone's time because we're coming up close to the hour. So I know Gabriel will stay over and so we can discuss any other questions that you might have. So please feel free to keep entering them in the chat. But again, thank you for everyone for participating in today's session. Really do appreciate your time with us here today. Definitely a very informative and timely presentation. And we definitely had some great takeaways from everyone here. But before we wrap up our presentation program today, we'd like to share a couple of upcoming events that we do have planned. So please be sure to mark your calendar from upcoming local post events, as well as some of the national events. So do join us next month for our April 1st Friday webinar on Friday, April 3rd, for Don't Leave Money on the Table, Unlocking Federal Contract Disputes to Increase Cost Recovery, presented by the team at Polero Mazza. Join us for an insightful webinar on navigating federal contract disputes and learn practical strategies to prepare a claim, pursue appeals, and recover costs you may be leaving on the table. And if you are interested in sharing knowledge on current educational topics for the First Friday series with our members, we are accepting presentation abstracts for late spring and summer 2026. So visit our website to learn more and submit your topic today, and sponsorships are available to support this popular ongoing program. This upcoming spring, you don't want to miss these upcoming national events. The members only event at Capitol Week is happening in just 2 weeks, right in our backyard in Rockville. Learn more about this upcoming program from all the government agencies to help align your business development to support our government's mission. Be sure to register for the special pre-cap event on Tuesday, March 24th, organized by the SAME Ukraine Field Chapter in partnership with the Blue Ridge Post, DC Post, and ISOA, the Ukraine Symposium, Defense and Civilian Sector Forecast, featuring an afternoon panel and networking reception with Ukrainian defense, military, and industry leaders discussing opportunities and timing to rebuild Ukraine's infrastructure during and after the conflict. Join SAME in Portland, Oregon for JETC. This event brings together programs and training to get you all the PDHs you'll need for the next year ahead. Learn more about the conference and see exciting special events you can add to your registration, including a riverboat cruise and golf tournament with the Portland Post, and attend the annual awards and gala on the last night of the conference. Learn more and register today at samejetc.org. And here at the DC Post, we have a very busy schedule ahead. The DC Post STEM scholarship applications are now open for incoming freshmen, undergraduate trade school, and graduate STEM students aligned with the SAME mission. We've given out over $75,000 last year, and the submission deadline is Monday, March 30th. If you know any high school students interested in attending one of the engineering and construction camps this summer, our applications are open through March 11th for students and SAME mentors. Camps are located near a military installation, including a new STEM camp out in Hawaii this year. We also do have local opportunities to mentor graduating high school students at a local architecture, construction, and engineering school, the Phelps High School in DC. I've been there. I know a bunch of DC members have been as well. So sign up today to join a voluntary mentoring session each Thursday this semester and save the date for the capstone presentation in May. More information is on our website. So we also have a couple of upcoming events. Join us actually tomorrow morning for free tour of the U.S. Botanical Production Facility as part of the Architect of the Capitol's campus facilities. The production facility is not usually open to the public, but on March 7th, you can join us for a unique opportunity to meet the gardeners and explore the orchids, the plants, rare endangered species grown in the special 85,000 square foot greenhouse. The meetup is at 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. And we'll have more free meetups planned for the rest of the year, coinciding with the America 250 celebration, including the return of the Army Twilight to Tattoo showcase this summer. Save the date for the APA Federal Planning Workshop which is going to be June 16th through 18th at the National Press Club. It is a 3-day conference in partnership with APA Federal Planning Division and the DC Post. So we're going to bring together planners, architects, engineers, and facility professionals. It's a great chance to connect with everyone, and so please make sure you mark your calendar now. Make sure you mark your calendar for our 18th annual DC and Nova Post Small Business Conference. We'll be back at the Capitol Turnaround and the Navy Yard, as we've gathered more than 30 agencies and 450 attendees each year. And please feel free to visit our DC Post website to learn more about our educational and social events throughout the year. If you'd like to reach a global community of more than 7,000 architect, engineering, construction, and technology leaders, our annual Post sponsorship, you have the opportunity to leverage our networks and showcase your firm with visibility and international recognition you won't get anywhere else. Support with the annual sponsorship, program sponsorship, just like this First Friday or individual events throughout the year. So check out the benefits of sponsorship and support the mission of the DC Post. So thank you all again for attending the First Friday, and thank you to Dr. Gabriel Legend for providing educational content today. If you haven't already, you can download today's documents before you leave the webinar, or look for a email labeled document delivery with your PDH certificate, opt-in list of registered participants, and we will post a recording later on. You may also get an email from Gabriel with more information about what was presented here today, and you can sign up for his newsletter moving forward. So lastly, I'd like to say thank you to the DC Post First Friday sponsors, Fox Rothschild, JS Global, ADG, KCCT, Parsons Corporation, and Stantec. So on behalf of myself, Bree Beal, and Samantha Long, have a great weekend. We look forward to seeing you out at the next SAME event. And I think that's it. Great, everyone. Gabriel, thanks a lot. Appreciate it, everyone.